Welcome to today's of sales for Artsyl Technologies. I'll be your main presenter today. Along with me is Artsyl Vasiliev, Chief Technology Officer for Artsyl Technologies. He'll be doing a technical demo and describing the architecture of docAlpha. A couple of housekeeping items. While we do the presentation, everyone will be on mute. However, if you do have questions, all you need to do is click on your gold arrow on your dialog box and go down to the chat tab and open the chat or question tab, the question tab, and just type in your question. You can do that at any point during the presentation. We will be holding questions until the end. But if at any point during the presentation you have a question, feel free to type it in there, and then we can address them one by one at the end. This will be recorded and posted to the partner portal, so if you have someone interested in showing this presentation to, Vita will send out the information after the presentation, and they can watch it on demand. Today we're going to talk about what's driving invoice processing automation and information capture. We'll go ahead and do a brief technical overview of the architecture of docAlpha, and then discuss how it can be used to do automated classification, potentially eliminating the need for separator sheets and manual sorting of documents. We'll talk about the automated extraction capabilities, the ability to do header, footer, as well as line item detail. And then Artsyl will actually show you a presentation and demonstrate the product, doing some invoices. And then we'll jump back to the PowerPoint and kind of wrap up with talking about connectivity, both at the front and back end of the product, how an ROI is generated using this technology, and then we'll go ahead and answer the questions. Artsyl, next slide.
Yeah, Jeff, do you see the new slide?
Yes, I do. Thank you. All right. In today's environments, we see a lot of challenges across the organization, but specifically in the accounts payable department, there are a lot of issues to contend with. Things like organizational efficiency, just having information, critical financial information at your fingertips when you need it, the high cost of the accounts payable process, the high cost of manually moving papers through the process, the time delays in getting approvals and confirming information. The actual fact that because of long delays in processing invoices, you can miss out on early payment discounts, so you actually lose money. Your vendor relations can be impacted by paying slow. Obviously, this can have a detrimental effect on your credit as an organization, as well as your vendor relations. And so, there's a whole host of problems, some being regulatory in nature, things like Sarbanes-Oxley here in the United States, and others being purely organizational, like the efficiency issue. But overall, we see just a lot of issues around the accounting process, and in specific, the accounts payable process. Now, in a recent study, the Aberdeen group looked at quite a few organizations. I think it was over 1,000 companies, and did an analysis of how much it costs to process a single invoice for each of those organizations. And of course, there's a wide variety in what the cost was. At the very high-end, with the most efficient organizations, their cost was $1 per invoice. And at the very low end, the most inefficient organizations were spending as much as $80 per invoice. Now, obviously, like a bell curve, those are the extremes. And what I tend to focus on is sort of the median or middle of the curve, where most companies are going to fall. And that's probably somewhere in the $11 to $34 range. So as we go out and talk to companies, we keep that in mind and convey that issue to them, you really start to understand what the full impact of the accounts payable department is and what the full impact of the inefficiency of that department is in terms of what it costs an organization. Now, if we take a look at what the typical AP process is, it's a very manual, time-consuming process. It starts with the receipt of invoices. Today, most organizations still receive physical invoices in the mail to the tune of 70%, 80% of their invoices come in via the U.S. Postal Service. And from there, someone has to manually sort them. It may be in the mailroom, and they get opened and stacked and sent over to the AP department. But then typically, even within the AP department, there's a further sorting of those invoices, perhaps into high volume or high value invoices. And so they are typically grouped or batched. They're often stamped with a timestamp, maybe assigned a general ledger code, and then it moves on to the actual process of paying that invoice. Now, that's where a lot of your data entry cost comes into play. Most invoices are manually entered into the AP or ERP system. So an accounts payable rep typically will enter the key information, the vendor name, vendor invoice number, PO number if it's a PO-based system, invoice number, invoice date, all the things that you would expect. And then there's typically a batch process of submitting those to the AP or ERP system, at which point they can actually run checks and send out the payments. Once the check run is performed, then you kind of have your back-end process, your archival or filing of those invoices, so that from a customer service perspective, if a vendor calls and says, I've been short paid, I have been not paid for this invoice, your AP staff can go and research that problem. So that tends to be the process of filing those invoices into a physical filing cabinet. For longer-term storage, sometimes that's sending those documents off-site to a storage facility. And so the whole process from start to finish tends to be extremely manual, and therefore it's one of the easiest processes to automate and to go into an organization and show the benefits of automation. So when a financial group looks at AP automation, because they are financial in nature, they understand the benefits, the ROI, and so forth. So what we're going to focus on today and talk about is how to apply Artsyl's docAlpha product to automate the accounts payable invoice process. Now, we just kind of talked about what the process is and kind of set the stage with what the cost per invoice is. As you talk to an organization, if you think about it, and many of you may actually sell accounting or ECM systems, and you probably understand that these systems may be $10,000, $20,000, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in large organizations. But what is the actual cost to process those invoices? And when you look at this cost, especially over the course of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, you start to see it's an incredibly expensive process. 100 invoices per month at that sort of lower echelon of cost, the more efficient tier at $11 per invoice, generates a cost of $13,000 per year for just 100 invoices. If you step up to 1,000 invoices per month at $11, you're talking $132,000 of expense annually. If you go to the median cost was $34 per invoice. You quickly see that 100 invoices per month costs an organization $40,000 annually. And if they're processing 1,000, they're spending $400,000 a year on their AP process. What this means is you have a great way to justify a solution like Artsyl's docAlpha. Now, everybody's probably seen this slide at one point or another, but I put it in here because I think it is very, very important to understand that from an initial investment perspective, capture usually is a small percentage of the deal, 10 to 20% of your overall ECM or BPM type system cost. But over the life of the application, the actual cost of entering information into that system is by far the largest ongoing expense. And Artsyl is focused on reducing that ongoing manual data entry expense. So that will be the focus throughout this presentation with the Artsyl docAlpha product. Now, what is docAlpha? docAlpha is a fully automated, server-based, distributed document capture and classification technology which makes the whole process of automated invoice processing streamlined and, of course, fully automated. It is a document and data capture product, very similar to other architectures out there like Kofax or Captiva, ReadSoft, Abby FlexiCapture, AnyDocs, but much more modern and much more intuitive to implement and much easier to support, and we'll go through that during the technical demo. Now, with that being said, I'll turn it over to Artsyl, and he can talk about the technical architecture and then demonstrate the product, and then we'll come back to the PowerPoint. Artsyl?
Thank you, Jeff. I'll talk a little bit about architecture using that single slide, and then I'll go directly to the demo. As Jeff mentioned, docAlpha is a client-server distributed architecture. That means that you can run it on a local network or even